name is Amanda Pyne. I'm a member of the music committee.
It's all right, we'll fix it for later.
Fix it for later. Welcome to First Parish Kingston, Unitarian Universalist, a place where we strive clearly not for perfection, for authenticity and connection. We come here to learn about being in relationship together, to listen, to forgive, to be vulnerable, to trust, and to have compassion for one another. We're gathered here to walk each other home. Be here in this moment. Let go and breathe. Before we begin with our chalice lighting, just a reminder that if you need the restroom during the service, you can go out and to the left through the entrance doors, and then there are restrooms on the right and the left. All right, we're going to light our chalice this morning with these words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Now please rise, if you are able, to sing our opening hymn, We'll Build a Land, number 121.
Stream. now is the point in our service where we do the candles of community. If you have a joy or concern that you would like to share, please come forward and state your name. Briefly, tell us what is on your mind so that we may share in it. You can also light a silent candle if you wish. Amanda will be available at the front here to help folks light the candles if needed. The reading. I recently read a book, this book, Factfulness by Hans Rosling. He died of pancreatic cancer in 2017 while the book was being written, and it was finished off by his son and daughter-in-law, who were his longtime collaborators. He also has some great TED Talks on YouTube. Our fourth UA principle is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And this book, which I read about a month ago, had a major impact for me on what this means. This reading is from that introduction adapted. I want people to realize when they have been wrong about the world to not feel embarrassment, but a childlike sense of wonder, inspiration, and curiosity. This is a book why almost everyone I've ever met does not see the world as it really is. You can feel more positive, less stressed, and more hopeful as you walk out into the world and continue your search. And by the way, I'll be returning the book to the library at the end of the service. In case anyone.
We know you have a lot of choices when it comes to donating. We ask that you give as you're able this morning, and we promise to be responsible stewards of your votes.
Joan, did we find the basket? Give us a minute. We might even get the music to work.
Sometimes there is no reason. The moon waxes and wanes. It was 100 years back. And you were in a way. Some things we find in daylight, and we're grateful to know. Some things we only learn where we did not want to go. I can't tell you it will all turn out fine, but I know there is help in hard times.
Dress rehearsal, real services start next week. During this talk, I'm going to review several of the 10 reasons in this book about why we get things wrong. To help emphasize that we are wrong, I'll ask questions from a quiz he developed to see how much we know about the world. This is summer school. For every question I ask, there will be 3 answers. After I list them, I'll give the correct answer and ask for a show of hands about who got it right. In his book, Rosling writes about doing this with chimpanzees. He imagines going to the monkey cave and reading one of his questions and then throws in 3 bunches of bananas labeled A, B, and C. He sees which ones the chimps pick. Of course, they'll pick at random. In his experience, and he and his organization have given these kinds of questions to thousands of people over the years. Humans get the answers very, very wrong. Usually on the side of, that's really much worse than things really are. Now in the book, after every answer, he says, well, you know, the people at the World Economic Forum did much worse than the chimpanzees. They got 1/3 of it right, and people at Davos got 10% right. I won't bother with that, but you can look around and see how well we did. So, first question, let's see if we can do better than the chimpanzees. That's a practice question. Experts believe that in the next 100 years, the average temperature will A, get warmer, B, stay the same, C, get colder. The correct answer, of course, is A. Okay, raise your hands who got it right. That was an easy one for this crowd. By the way, the full quiz can be found at gapminder.org, as in Mind the Gap. The negativity instinct. It is important to remember that when we hear negative news, good news almost never reaches us. As the old saying goes, if it bleeds, it leads. Things can be both better and still be bad. Gradual improvement is not news. More news does not necessarily mean more suffering. Sometimes it is just better due to increased surveillance and the global interconnectedness of media. It's not a worsening world. How did the number of deaths per year from natural disasters change over the past 100 years? A, more than doubled. B, remained the same. C, decreased to less than half. The answer is C. Who got it right? Very small percentage. I can't even watch the local 5 o'clock news anymore. It's about car crashes, disasters, and the like. The takeaway from this question is that we are getting so much better at global humanitarian aid that it's unbelievable. Ignore social media, local media. Feel better, make yourself feel better, and donate a bit more to the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, the UUSC, and so on. They are making a difference, and they are making things better. In the last 20 years, the proportion of the world living in extreme poverty has A, remained the same, B, almost doubled, C, almost halved. The answer is C, almost halved. Who got it right? The book says that less than 10% of the people get it right on average. Of course, the chimps would be about 30%. Around 200 years ago, 85% of the world lived in extreme poverty, where the majority lived until about 50 years ago when it dropped to below 50%. We're now at about 9% living in extreme poverty. That's a massive improvement, but it still means around 700 million people. Things are getting better, but they are still bad. The straight line instinct. When we see a chart of something like number of infections or world population, we tend to automatically project past the end of the chart, figuring that the future will look just like the present. However, for example, infectious diseases doubled, so that the number of cases is not 1, 2, 3, but rather 2, 4, 8, and so on. We got much better at knowing this during COVID, but we seem to be forgetting again. Most graphs are not straight lines, but rather part of a curve that we don't see all of, or perhaps, for various reasons, they're obscuring part of it. When you see a graph, ask yourself if you are being given the whole picture. Think of a newborn. At birth, they are about 19 inches long. In 6 months, they will be around 26 inches long. If that trend continues, they'll be 13 feet at the age of 10. Of course, we know that doesn't happen. Almost nothing ever follows the simple straight line. The generalization instinct. Our brains want to put things into categories. That will eat us. They will feed us. I want to mate with that person, and so on. This greatly reduces the amount of work our brain has to do. Big teeth and claws, first category. Someone who was at my fire last night, second category. You're on your own for the third. In today's world, we're easily misled by false stereotypes and categorizations that our mind is all too willing to impose. Our minds are lazy. We often group people into us and them. Nationally, we say that country is more partisan or divided than ever, but we also do it globally. We still use terms like the third world, but there isn't a third world. Most of the world is in the middle. As I said, under 10% live in extreme poverty. How many of today's one-year-old children have been vaccinated against some disease? 80%, B, 50%, C, 20%. The answer is A, 80%. How many got it right? Very good. Now this implies a whole bunch of really amazing things about the world. Vaccines must be kept cold all the way from the factory to the child's arm. They're shipped in refrigerated containers to harbors around the world, where they are loaded into refrigerated trucks and then driven out to local clinics. Remember during COVID with the UPS and FedEx ads showing how they delivered the vaccines? Made a big point of their refrigerated trucks. This is happening right now and has been for a long time all around the world. UNICEF ads showing doctors and nurses giving shots to children do not show the infrastructure, the roads, the electricity, the logistics planning that makes it all possible. We do need categories. They can save your life. Green light, don't walk. Or your palate, mushrooms are yucky. But realize which simple categories, us and them, left and right, developed or third world, no longer serve their purpose. When you hear mushrooms are good. Beware of the majority. When you hear a phrase like the majority agrees that, or similar leading words like most accept that, ask yourself if it's 51%, 99%, or something in between. The single perspective incident, as I said, our brains are lazy. If it can find a simple answer, it will use it. It will cherry pick its worldview to support that answer. It is much harder to look at problems from many angles. Test the ideas, seek out people who disagree with you, have them find weaknesses in your thoughts. Of course, in our society, this is amazingly hard. There are organizations like the National Conversation Project or the Abortion Conversation Project trying to work on this by lowering the heat so that we can talk to each other instead of at each other. Many activists in particular fall victim to this. Knowingly or not, they often exaggerate the problem that they are dedicated to solving. Some of you may have noticed or remember there used to be the billboard on 3A, driving towards 3, that had the tiger, right, the Bengal tiger, and it said, you know, maybe extinct or something. In 1996, tigers, giant pandas, and black rhinos were all listed as endangered. How many of these species are more endangered now? A, 2 of them, B, 1 of them, C, none of them. The answer is C. Who got it right? Pretty good. All right, a harder one. What percentage of plastic waste ends up in the ocean? A, less than 6%. B, around a third. C, 2/3 or more. The answer is A, less than 6%. Who got it right? Almost all plastic stays on land. Most people think that plastic waste ends up in the oceans. You've probably heard about that great plastic garbage island in the Pacific, or seen commercials from the 2 hipster guys who were clearing the beaches. Some plastic will always enter the oceans, especially as the rich companies keep selling their waste to middle-income or low-income countries. But it is nowhere near as much as people believe. There's still too much, though. The blame instinct. We always want to find someone to blame when something goes wrong. Don't look for an individual or group to blame. Expect that bad things can happen without anyone intending them to. Spend your energy to understand the multiple interacting causes or systems that created the situation. For example, big pharmaceutical companies rarely do any research on malaria, sleeping sickness, or other diseases that affect only the poorest of the world. There's not much profit in it. Many of them had to be dragged, kicking and screaming, against their will, to making COVID vaccines backed by promises of the US to pay. Who's to blame for that? The CEO? They follow the directions more or less set by the board of directors. They're hired by the shareholders. The big pharmaceutical companies are interesting and not like many other public companies. Their ownership is stable and less subject to the whims of the economy. Other companies do better or worse as people go on spending sprees or cut back. But a cancer patient always needs their treatment. So who are the biggest shareholders in pharmaceutical companies? Retirement funds. If you're upset with the lack of new medicines for the world's poorest, blame the seniors. They need stable stocks. Is it their fault? Not really. It's not easy though. See, sometimes the villain is the whole system, and fixing systems is very hard. A fact-based worldview is hard to establish, and from personal experience, much harder to maintain. For myself, the slope from skepticism, trust but verify, to nihilism, everyone is lying and nothing is true, is all too easy. Maintaining such a view, however, I find makes my life less stressful, more hopeful, and to me it is an important part of living our fourth principle, a respectful search for truth and meaning in the world. May it be so. Please stand as you are willing and able to sing together hymn number 169, We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
subtle manipulation often mislead us. Our beautiful broken world is not as bad as we believe, but that does not mean it is not broken. As one of my former ministers used to say, our service ends, our work begins.